welcome to episode 15 of Role Play Grow, the podcast for tabletop entrepreneurs, creators, and fans. I am Courtney Stover of Lightheart Adventures, and in this podcast, we talk to the creators behind the brands and the tabletop roleplay gaming space about who they are and how they are turning their passion for gaming into a career. In this episode, I chat with Kathleen of Worlds Unending, an upcoming app for campaign management and world building. We connected with Worlds Unending a few months ago when Brenton did a guest post on their blog about world building, and I've been watching their progress and announcements ever since. I try to bring y'all a variety of guests from not just different crafts or industries within tabletop gaming and geekdom, but also people from different periods of their business life. We've chatted with folks that are super established and popular, people in the middle of kickstarters, storefront owners, and today we get to learn from someone who is right in the thick of development. I think that Worlds Unending is going to be an incredibly useful tool for helping folks develop their own worlds and universes. And it's really cool hearing about the process of developing something this complex with a group of friends. I think y'all will really enjoy hearing from Kathleen, learning about what they are working on, learning how they keep up motivation when it's a group of volunteers at this point. But I definitely have faith that it's going to turn into something really cool and really successful for them. Before we jump into today's episode, there's a couple updates for you. First up, I mentioned this last week, but just in case you missed that episode, we did just release a new map pack on DM's Guild for Candlekeep Mysteries. Brenton went through the whole book and decided on 16 locations that he felt could use a battle map. He spent several weeks preparing them for you, and we now have maps in full color for the first time on a publication, not just black and white. You can find it by either going to dmsguild.com and searching for Lightheart Adventures as the author, or you can go to lightheartadventures.com/shop to find all of our DM's Guild and Drive-Thru RPG publications in one spot. Next up, we do have a Patreon under Lightheart Adventures, but it also covers Roleplay Grow. You have options on whether you'd like to follow the adventurer track, which gets you maps and adventures, or the merchant track, which gets you some fun bonuses around this podcast, like contributing questions to upcoming guests, a project spotlight on the show, and more. You can also support the show by subscribing, sharing with your friends, and leaving a review. I talk about this every time, but it's because reviews are very important for the show to grow. So if you've been hanging out and you like what you're hearing, please drop me a review on your podcast platform of choice. We've still only got one review on Apple Podcasts, and it's from before I even dropped my first full episode. So I would very much love to hear from y'all and see if we can get that number up. Lastly, the affiliate that I'm highlighting today is Friday Afternoon Tea. We've been working through the RPG sampler pack of a whole bunch of different flavors, and y'all, they're so good. Friday is a delightful person, and she makes some scrumptious tea. Go to fridaytea.com, use code LIGHTHEARTADV at checkout, and you'll receive 10% off your order while supporting this show. All right, let's go chat with Kathleen. All right, I am very excited today to introduce y'all to Kathleen, the head of outreach at Worlds Unending. Hey, Kathleen, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. I always like recording on Sundays because it's just really relaxing and chill, and I just get to have fun conversations. Yeah, so to start things off, can you tell us a little bit about just who you are and how you got into the gaming space?
Sure. So let's see. I'm an anthropologist by training. I have a PhD in anthropology. But I started gaming probably when I was about 9, I want to say. My mom got me this set of D&D. It was kind of like this old box set thing. And she had no idea what it was, and I had no idea what it was. And she was very game and did her best in trying to kind of run adventures and build something out because she knew I loved fantasy and anything with dragons. So she's just really supportive of that. And we kind of did that for a while, and then played a bit in high school. Played in college, played in grad school, took a bit of a hiatus, just didn't have a group around, and then got back into it not too long ago, actually. Started a new job, and I was sitting with a colleague one day, and he was this very well-dressed man, and this, always in a 3-piece suit, and we were saying something, and I said, "This is like Dungeons and Dragons, but way less exciting." And he got kind of offended, and he said, what's wrong with Dungeons and Dragons? I said, no, nothing. This is actually like we were in a war game or something. I was like, this is actually way less fun. And a couple days later, he comes up to my office and he sort of looks at me and he says, so I have a group and we play Dungeons and Dragons. Would you like to come over? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And so through that, I met the other members, indirectly, kind of the other members of my team. My fiance, who's part of this World's Unending project with me, and some great folks. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
I'm just really enjoying the visual of your mom finding this, like, oh, it's a dragon game, and just like trying to figure it out with you.
It was so cute. Like, I was on the floor, like, what is this? Like, what are these boxes on this piece of paper and this strange map? What's going on?
That sounds awesome. We introduced my mom to Dungeons and Dragons, like, oh gosh, end of 2018, I think. Like Brenton made a one-shot campaign, and she comes from a very religious background. So we're like, okay, how do we do this to make it like unoffensive? So that kind of actually turned into his first one-shot, where it was like, okay, we're gonna go rescue the children who were kidnapped by some devils, and they're in a chapel.
Yeah, that's awesome though. They just kind of run with like, this is gonna work, and we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, I love playing with my mom. It's fun.
I'm trying to convince my extended family or like the rest of my family that they want to do this now. So I think if I give them enough alcohol, they'll probably do just about anything. So
that usually tends to be the case with alcohol.
it's people get adventurous.
Yeah. So what are you playing right now?
So we actually play a couple different things. One of our teammates is about to start her first game in the sort of Star Trek RPG. She's a big Trekkie. Oh. So we're starting that up soon. We also have kind of my fiance put it together. It's kind of a homebrew system of just 1,000 different pieces from different systems that he likes. And eventually he kind of cobbled it together over years into a decently well-play balanced system. So we have kind of our own little homebrew that we play.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We also do a lot of just like little indie games too. And we have, obviously we play 5th Ed as well, but with other folks. But like a lot of indie games, like especially with COVID, a lot of 2-player games that just he and I can play. Found some really cool ones that way. Really, really enjoyed exploring that space.
Oh yeah, the duet version of really any game is so much fun, and it's a lot more intimate too.
Yep. Yeah, and you can kind of explore interesting themes, and it's sometimes easier to do. And if you're kind of a jealous player, like I can be sometimes, I can just get the spotlight all the time. So it's great.
So I would love to hear a little bit about kind of just on a overview, because we're going to get into the nitty gritty, but what is Worlds Unending going to be?
Sure. So it sort of started as a dream. There are lots of different ways, obviously, of keeping track of your campaigns and doing world building. And there are some that are digital out there, and there's, old fashioned paper and pencil, but kind of collectively between our team, we never found anything that really fits what we wanted it to do and really kind of takes full advantage of all the sort of emerging technologies coming out there. And so our team is a whole bunch of mostly software engineers and then me. And like, they said, hey, we could just build this thing for ourselves that's, matches a little bit more what we want. And someone said, well, if we want this, there might be other people that want it. So we might as well, try seeing if anyone else is interested. So that's kind of where we're going to be. So, there's just this kind of how to do kind of world building and keeping track of your campaigns and in any system that you want, right? Whether you're a, 5th Ed player all the way down to, indie RPGs or making your own stuff up, something that would just really be accessible and easy to use for everyone.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit. I've pored over the website trying to get a feel of what the different aspects are going to be. But really just starting with the world building, like what are the features and options that y'all are wanting to present?
Yep. So it's nice because we want it to have a very integrated feel. Because sometimes I'm a big world builder, right? I'll say that. I love adding lots of detail to worlds. I love doing world building workshops and things like that. But not everyone is. And frankly, when you're playing a game, half of your world building happens on the fly, right? You're kind of like, oh, I'm creating new characters, and just because I suddenly need a person here, an NPC or whatever in this town. And so it's kind of the idea is to try to integrate that, but also to make it pretty seamless. So if I have kind of a grand idea for a world and I have a bunch of even just notes written elsewhere that I want to be able to kind of incorporate in, I can start with a pretty blank template and I can just kind of create a new universe. And I can just start taking notes. I can just start writing them down in a document. And I'm writing down, and then I realize, hey, look, that's a person, and I can highlight that, and I can right click on it, or if you're a Mac user, different click, or if you can use your mobile phone or a tablet as well. That's one of the things we want to make sure we do. But then you could just kind of say, hey, look, that's a person, and I want to keep track of that person. And then it will create almost, I'm kind of calling them baseball cards in my head. That's not what we'll call them really, but baseball cards. So it creates this like little card for someone, and then you can kind of put whatever you want in that. You could put a picture in there. You could put, stats in there if you had stats. You could put connections if, where do they work, who their family is. You could write a little, maybe short blurb about them. And then you can kind of close that, go back to what you were writing. And every time now that person comes up in the text again, it'll just link back automatically to that card. So you can kind of, building this out. Or maybe, maybe I've built a little card and I said, hey, I've got Susan here. And Susan has a sister named Jonah, I don't know, whatever. And then I can from Susan's card, I can create Jonah's card. And it could be sort of the same thing. And it can, that you can just kind of keep building, sort of very kind of organically and fluidly, and then kind of come back and work your way back to where you were. So you can be very structured if you want to say, hey, I'm going to create countries and then rulers and then other NPCs, or you can kind of be very free flowing and saying, I can just kind of create things as I'm coming up with them on the spot. And one of the things we really want to do, and I think this is cool. So we have a lot of folks, we have a mathematician on our team, and she's doing some research into natural language processing, and some of the other team is helping her with that. And just this idea that eventually, you could have an AI running in the background, or machine learning, I guess technically, that'll sort of pick up all of those references. So you just write someone's name and it'll just automatically tag it for you. You don't even have to, because it recognizes that that's a person you've already mentioned. Or it might be like, hey, I think that is a person and you haven't mentioned them yet. Is that a person? It'll kind of prompt you to say, do you want to actually create a card for that person, or do you not care, or whatever. And so you kind of have that ability to kind of create this whole kind of world on the fly and sort of use these technologies to kind of help make that easier and faster to do.
That sounds really cool.
It's a dream anyway.
It sounds like it's going to be really helpful for people that have kind of an idea and they just want to start putting it in more of a condensed place. But yeah, like the automation tools sound pretty helpful as well.
And we definitely want to have things like sort of like a full text search, right? So, sometimes either a lot of the kind of things out there have wiki style formats, and you've got to kind of go figure out like, okay, what did I categorize this person under? Is this did I make it, was it an NPC? What did I call it, a king? I don't know. But to kind of take some of that guesswork out is that you can just kind of go search your own notes and it'll just pull it up, and you can have different labels and things like that. But just being able to say, I can just find what I'm looking for by searching for it, rather than having to like remember how I categorized it, because I never do. I have great categorization skills, and then I promptly forget where I put everything. So
yeah. So is there going to be any kind of folder structure with this? Like once you do have lots of that to organize?
So it's kind of, things will have labels, so, or can have labels, entirely up to individuals. So it won't really have a folder structure, or at least at this point in the vision, it won't. We could, who knows? Everything could change when we start doing user testing, and they're like, give me this. Okay, fine. But this is the idea, like maybe I have a label of towns, and maybe I have a label of particular kinds of countries. So let's say my country is Maison. It's a country from the world that I've been helping build out. Okay, and I said, okay, so if I click both the label for towns and the label for Maison, it'll pick me up like all the labels it'll like show me a list of all the towns in Maison. So basically you can kind of choose how you want to organize things. It won't necessarily show up in a folder, but it will show up in kind of an organized list based on how you kind of slowly begin to add those different filters, basically. Kind of, when you're looking, like kind of similar for when you're looking for like any sort of online shopping, and you're like slowly filtering down to what you want. Like, no, thank you. I would really like shirts today, not shorts.
Okay, cool. So something else that I noticed on the website was a mention of pre-generated templates. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell me about those?
Yep. So this is the idea that everything we want to have is really, we want it to be customizable. So you can make, your baseball cards, your character sheets, essentially, for characters or places or, objects, whatever, look however you want. But at the same time, we appreciate that, there are probably going to be some basics that everyone's going to have. So everyone's kind of going to have some kind of template for NPCs, maybe. And in there, you might want different stats. And so we'll kind of create some of those based on some of the big sort of the big systems, 5th edition, things like that, where we have OSRs and stuff that we can use. That way we can say, hey, look, okay, if you play 5th ed, basically you're going to have a digital character sheet that you can just use. And you can move stuff around on it. And you can add new things if you want to. But you don't have to build that all from the ground up if you don't want. So that's kind of what that will be, just so people can build stuff up from the ground up. But if they don't want to do quite that level of work, we'll have some stuff built in for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So tell me about the marketplace.
Yeah, so this one I'm really excited about. This is going to take a little while to get set up, but this is where I think a lot of the outreach that I've been doing to folks is to kind of help build some of the backbone for this. So one of the things we want to be able to do is, let's say you create a world, right? You do all this world building and you have all these peoples and you have towns and you have maps that you've incorporated in there and you've got all this kind of cool stuff. But you think someone else might want to use it. So for instance, my sister's a fantasy author and, if she creates a world that she uses for her books, but she may want to create it in here as well. And then she can sell it on the marketplace just as a whole compact world. And then someone else that is using the system can just buy a pre-generated world. Or maybe it's just a single NPC they want to buy. Or maybe someone is a map maker and they just sell a bunch of maps and someone goes, hey, I want to buy that map, for $1 or whatever, incorporate it into my universe. And there you go. Now it's yours. So it's a kind of a way for people to, for creators to be able to sell the cool things that they're doing, that would be useful to gamers. And I envision this being all sorts of cool stuff, right? So maps and, content, you could have little one-offs, one-shot sort of games built in there. I see even things like, I'm big into kind of fashion. Like you could have, dress-up dolls and different kind of fashion things that people could kind of, incorporate in, or different backgrounds, or just kind of cool artwork that you could really get in there. But then if you also want to sell your own stuff, you got it. So you can, just to be a place to be able to really kind of create a thriving set of options for your world that everyone can kind of share.
Yeah, I think that will be a huge benefit once that's up and running. So you said that's going to be a little ways down the road. And I know that you're still in development and then you're going to have to do user testing and then modifications and more testing. But
yep.
But yeah, I mean, I guess since I like to get into the nitty gritty of processes and things on the show. So what has it been like, and kind of what are the processes that y'all have been doing since you came together as a team, had this idea? Actually, let's start with that. How did this come together?
So it was always something that my fiance, he was really the kind of driving idea person behind this. It was something that he wanted, and he is a software engineer. And so he was just determined to kind of make it on his own because he's a software engineer by training, but at this point in his career, he doesn't actually get to do much building. So, for fun, he likes to make stuff. And we had, about the time where he decided he kind of wanted to build this for himself, we had started playing with a new group of folks, just playing in kind of a long-running campaign. And a couple of them were software engineers, and one of, they'd been working on another project together that was kind of unrelated, and they sort of realized, hey, that we enjoy working together, and Jeffrey, who's my fiance, was telling them about his idea, and they're like, hey, we could help with that, then you've got more people working on it. And I was like, hey, I can't do any software coding because I don't know how to do any of that. But I can help with marketing. And since the rest of the group is a whole bunch of introverts, they're like, well, yeah, you could do that, please, somebody. So then it, just went from, that to okay, let's figure out what we need to do this. And I think what's interesting about this particular project is they built not just the sort of software that sits on top, so that user interface piece, but they built out a whole kind of, and I don't understand the actual technical terms for this, so I'm sorry to my team if I botch all of this together, but kind of the underlying sort of architecture for, how they do kind of moving data around in clever ways. They built that all from the ground up. So it's a whole kind of purpose-built, custom system for this to really make it work quickly and to make it work efficiently and make it work well, which is when you're, trying to find stuff and you have to click on a link and then you got to sit there for 30 seconds while the little wheel spins around. Nobody wants that. So they really worked hard to kind of build that backbone to keep us going.
Yeah. How long have y'all been working on this?
Yeah. So we got started, I think officially it was sort of late September last year when we kind of really got rolling. We'd had the idea a little bit earlier, but it was kind of that was really, I think, when like, okay, we got the legal stuff together and got our name officially thing, which because it's a whole bunch of paperwork and things like that, which is always great fun. And so, yeah, that's about when we kicked off, and we've been working hard for the past, goodness, I guess 9 months or so now.
Yeah, that really was fast. For listeners who don't know, Brenton wrote a guest blog for them as well. And we published that in February, I think. So that was like really fast to just be up and running, and just a couple of months before like I started hearing about y'all. And that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's been it's pretty quick. I mean, it's funny because it's easier for me to like go out and be loud and sell stuff, right? I can sell all the things that they haven't made yet. The fun tensions always between marketing and outreach and the actual developers. So I get to make all these promises and be real loud. But the rest of the team is moving really fast. They are, I think, as of this weekend, by the end of this weekend, they should have our beta ready to go, or alpha, sorry, ready to go. So they are getting that up and running so we can actually take that to some of our first very early user testing. And then we hope in sort of the next probably 3 to 5 months to get our first kind of beta test where we'd have, probably a closed beta initially, but try to get that out and get it in the hands of folks who will do their best to break it for us.
Which hopefully they find, not lots of errors, but hopefully they do like all of the brokenness.
Exactly. We'll be working on this one for a while. It is a project of love, certainly. And so we're not likely to give it up anytime soon, but it's nice if you can get those kinks worked out before you start doing things like having a Kickstarter and asking people to actually pay for things. So
is that the plan, to do Kickstarter?
It is. Yeah, that's a big, scary one. But some of the reason for that is we can do all of the coding on our own, obviously. And of course, we're doing it all in our spare time because we all have real jobs. But a lot of the things, that we would want for the site to start would be nice to have other artists and people who can kind of come in. And even just like artwork for the website would be nice. And for the app itself, I have visions of like, hey, if you're playing a sci-fi style game, that you could have kind of a theme that would kind of have stars and space. If you're playing you might have a forest theme if you're playing more of a kind of forest-based game or whatever it might be. But we definitely don't have those artwork skills. So being able to kind of hire artists from the community would be really sort of a nice thing to do. And then we want to have, so I talked about that marketplace. We want to have some sort of free content for folks when they do actually sign up. So if you sign up for a certain tier, you might get like, hey, you get a bunch of stuff that's just we give you. And so you have some kind of starter images and maps and sort of generic things that you can use. So we want to, be able to lean on creators to get some of those things too. And a Kickstarter is just a good way to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to real quick go back to something that you mentioned, which you've got some alpha testers lined up, and then you're going to do closed beta, and then you'll open it up a little bit more. What's been your process for finding those alpha testers?
So those are the people that I know and trust personally oftentimes. So we have basically I'd say even probably a year and a half ago when this was still a very like baby idea, I went onto my Facebook, which is of course my personal Facebook is full of people who are giant game playing fans. And so we kind of asked them for some initial ideas, and a bunch of them actually signed up to say, hey, look, we'll be happily do some of this initial alpha testing. We also do have a Patreon, and so that's one of the perks of the Patreon is we don't really have tiers or anything or giveaways because we don't have a lot to give away, but Patreon supporters do get the opportunity to be alpha testers if they want to. So it's even at $1, like we don't differentiate where that level sits. So, and then beta testers, we have a newsletter, so people who are signed up for that will get kind of first invites, and then it will kind of open up just mutuals on Twitter and things like that, or people that are following us in other places. That's kind of where we'll start to pick from that crowd.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Like friends are the best place to start for sure.
Because, they'll probably be the most honest, right? Like I've got some friends who will be very, very blunt. Like, this is terrible. And why did you do like this? Okay, thanks. So just what you want, right? It's like you don't want it, but you do.
Yeah, for sure. You're like, I want you to be nice, but I guess I have to know what's wrong with it. Okay.
But yeah, like if you look at it and you're like, well, this is just an ugly way to start. Like, okay, well, fine, we don't have pretty artwork yet. Like, be nice.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the outreach that you've been doing. Like, who are the kinds of creators and people that you're trying to connect with, and Have you encountered any issues with the fact that you're still really early on? You don't have a ton to show off yet. Like, has that kind of impacted anything?
I think the kind of that we're very early, and it's very much the selling something that doesn't exist yet makes sort of can make it a little tough to kind of shift people over to things like a Patreon or anything where they might be donating money. But the beautiful thing about the role playing game crowd, especially on Twitter, which I had never. This is not so secret now, but like I had never been on Twitter before I started doing this, and just folks are engaging and friendly and supportive, and there's a lot of this kind of mutual reinforcement, and that's kind of my philosophy. So yeah, we got to have you guys on as sort of guest bloggers, and it's sort of being able to do that. So let us hype you with like the forum that we have, which is not huge, but it's there, and then you hype us, and then this is kind of how just making friends. So we've done different points of outreach, right? So we did our first one was kind of our map series, which really we focused on some really cool map makers. And I figure we'll kind of run some of those occasionally as we go throughout the year. So, people who do character art, focus on some of those groups, people who do like really quirky stuff, which is something that I do, but people who are really into like flora and fauna for worlds and drawing some of that and sort of writing things like that. People who are really into some of the folklore, people who are just kind of really excited about world building, kind of reaching out to all these folks around the community and saying, hey, look, here's another platform for you to kind of speak, and then use that as a way to build those relationships, because it makes it a bit more real, right? Like then you're actually two human beings and not just kind of words scrawled across Twitter or screaming across the void at each other.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Once you kind of get it past the beta testing part, is that when you are planning on launching the Kickstarter?
Yeah, so the hope is kind of use the Kickstarter. Anyone who sort of would back us on Kickstarter would get access to the beta, but use that to kind of really give us that last push to kind of get us into our first actual project, the open product. Mm-hmm. That people could have and use. And, it, like you said, it will be growing. We'll be adding new features as we go. But yeah, we think that's sort of good timing and sort of a way to do that. Because then, we know that it mostly works. We know that once you're in beta and you're saving your data, you get to keep your data. That doesn't go away. That the alpha testers, probably we won't keep all of that data because it's just going to be a mess. But once we're in beta, like you're putting that time and effort in, and we want to make sure people can keep that and keep using it. And one of the things actually I kind of want to highlight too is that, and this I think is nice because we're trying to build it in from the beginning. So even right now is sort of accessibility and internationalization. So that's apparently quite difficult to do in terms of software development, to make sure you have all of that kind of easy and fluid and seamless for folks who need that kind of thing. And so, making sure that we can kind of be targeting some of our testing in alpha and beta stages with folks who need accessibility readers and things like that is a big piece of what we want to make sure to do.
Yeah, that's great. Are you going to have any kind of like audio version of any of it?
I'm actually not certain fully that's a good question for me to ask the team. I'm not certain fully what our accessibility is going to involve, but yeah, I will have to ask.
Fair enough. So after the Kickstarter, and once you are good and ready to launch the first iteration, is there going to be kind of a fee to use this? Is there going to be a membership? Like, what's that kind of structure going to look like?
Yep. So we think we're going to go kind of a freemium model. So our plan right now, we'll kind of see what the data requirements are, is that they're, we kind of a very sort of very tightly, like very low data storage kind of free tier that people could use if they want to explore it and see if this is something that they'd be interested in. And then there'd be different tiers depending on how much of a kind of power user you are. And we'll kind of, some of the testing that we're going to do internally is say, okay, like if I just want to run a one shot, how much space does that take up, and what would that look like? Or if I run kind of one campaign at a time versus some professional GMs who run 6 or 7 campaigns at a time in different worlds and all this kind of stuff. So being able to kind of scale that appropriately and say, hey, there are different levels for that. But I think all within the range of kind of what you see in some of the main other folks that are playing in this space. It would be anywhere from $0 to probably $10, $12 a month or something like that, depending on how much you use it.
That sounds really awesome and really affordable too.
That's our hope. And then, like, it's a little cheaper if you pay for like a whole year. And if, we're going to start going to cons once, the world opens up a little bit. And if catch us at a con, maybe there's a discount or something like that. So,
ooh, yeah, that'd be cool.
And, fun stuff. This is like, I'm having half the fun right now is just like, I get to buy, we have a logo now. I can buy all this stuff with our logo.
Yeah, designing merch is so much fun. It's a little too much fun.
Yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna buy it all for me, and like, no, what are you gonna do with it? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're having that a lot right now. It's like, I just want to put like lighthearted pictures and roleplay girl on everything. And I'm like, but who would actually wear that outside of my mom? Maybe we should design something like more interesting with the logo.
Yeah, no, my mom definitely will love all of it. We actually have these little planets on our part of our kind of broader logo and branding right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a coaster maker, and she was like super excited when I asked if it was like, could you make like coasters of each of our little planets? She was like, I absolutely can. And so like it'll have our logo stamped on the bottom of the coaster. So you know, it's like this is our way to, it's like it's cool and shiny, but we're there.
Oh, that's really fun.
And yeah, my mom is definitely getting a set of that.
Yeah. So disclaimer, I'm actually an IT project manager. So I'm definitely nerding out about so much of this conversation and its whole project. But it makes me curious on, like, I know that it can definitely be a struggle at times to get volunteers and get engineers to work, especially when they're tired from their full-time job. So what has the just development process been like? I mean, I'm not sure how involved you've been in the actual like kind of planning what's next for next iteration, but just kind of like from what you've been able to observe, like how's it been working with friends but a bunch of volunteers and kind of like keeping everybody motivated and on task?
Yeah, so that is that's a struggle for anyone everywhere, right? But so we do have regular, like we meet once a week. We kind of have a standing meeting on Tuesday nights, and that's kind of our touch point. We run through, admin stuff and where marketing is that day, and product management, and then kind of the engineering and some of our research stuff. So we're kind of very kind of like tight notes. We have some folks who are pretty type A on the team, and so they're very good about keeping us on task. But they, I know that the product and the engineering team, they definitely have a big sort of, they've got kind of the Jira board and like all sorts of different, ways of keeping track. And there's, the constant sort of touch points, and they do sort of regular weekly engineering calls where they kind of get on and sort of, okay, what are the challenges we're working through this week? So it can be easy for everyone to get tired, but we've been doing a pretty good job so far of keeping the drumbeat up enough to kind of keep people motivated. And, like I said, it's a product of love, but we also did all put in some money to kind of, initial startup costs, because a lot of obviously the, having to pay for AWS services and things like that can, come with a certain amount of cost, which before you have income is just got to come from somewhere. So that kind of keeps people motivated too, right? Because they've all got skin in the game, or we all do. And so that can be good. But I think my favorite game, and this is where the fun marketing thing is I just sign us up for stuff. Like I signed us up for a demo at a con, like it's a virtual con a couple months ago. And the team was like nowhere near ready. And I was like, I don't care. I said, we're going to do it. So now we have to have something. So like I had to throw something together as kind of a mock-up concept, which was, sort of a useful forcing function for them. So they have half jokingly said that like that I should keep signing us up for things because it will kind of keep that fire lit but finding the right balance, right? You don't want to burn anyone out either because it's right, especially now, right? That's just what the world and what it is. People kind of get tired, and you have to be accepting and allowing of that. So it's a good balance.
Yeah, I feel like demos are one of the most motivating things out there. I'm just like, well, I mean, it's got to look good. Like you don't want to embarrass us, right?
That's this one. I was like, I need some screenshots by Saturday. Like, what? I was like, I better, but like they're they're working on the actual build, so not just kind of a mock-up. And I was like, so it better look good.
Yeah, well, honestly, that's a good transition. Is that I would love to just talk a little bit about the screenshots that you sent over. So for listeners' sake, I will have these on the show notes, which you'll be able to find the link below on whatever podcast player you're listening to. But yeah, Kathleen sent over some screenshots that I would love to just talk about a little bit.
Sure. So the first one is kind of what you see when you first log in. And obviously this is where we, don't have the pretty artwork to make it all wonderful and everything like that. But we'll have it eventually. But the kind of idea, you walk in and you say, okay, so I have maybe a bunch of universes that I've created, and those are different worlds that might exist in different places. Or I just want to create a new one. And it's just that simple, right? If I want to create a whole new world, I just type the new name in the box and I click new universe, and there you go. Or I can kind of go click in on any of the other ones that I have. And then the second one sort of opening these up to make sure I'm talking about the thing. So this is kind of what I talked about when I said you can kind of create like those baseball card type things. And this is what a template might look like. Because so you can say, hey, for every character, anytime I just say something is a character, it's just kind of the terminology he used, but you could use whatever. I want them to maybe have a background. I want them to have a nationality. I want to have an occupation. And I can kind of decide, what those different things are. So they're going to have a bunch of items. A background might just be a block with a lot of text that you can put in. A nationality might tie to a location, which eventually, we're going to try to use sort of maps with pins, and that could then be a direct sort of pin there. Or it might just be, hey, nationality is a location, and I've said locations or countries or whatever it might be. And so you can kind of, play with these, and you can add them and subtract them. And then what you do is when you go over to the next screenshot, that one will show you kind of what it looks like now that you created. Obviously, this is not the pretty form, but so now you've got an actual character. And you can see at that top where it says Augustus, and then underneath it says character. That character bit, that's that label that I was talking about. So if you ended up clicking on that label, it would also then open up pretty much every character you'd ever made, and then you could sort of filter it down from there. And so you can see, right, in his backpack, he's got certain things, and some of those things are important enough that they are also items. And so somewhere, like, they actually have their own baseball card. You can tell they have a little link that if you clicked on that little link, it would open up that card and tell you about that item. It might tell you what its particular sort of stats are, or if it has an interesting history, it would tell you what that is all about. You can see under nationality, it's got Aladar, that's a country. So you could click on that, and then that would open that whole country's sort of card and text and background and whatever you want to put in for a country. He's got an occupation. Then you can see down in the background is where I was saying, he was typing along. And as he did that, every time he came to a name, he highlighted that and he made that into a new character card. So that one kind of will automatically generate and have a similar looking card to this, but not pre-filled in. And then he could go in and sort of add detail to. So that's kind of how it sort of works. And it's just kind of that really being able to just type text in and kind of make what you want can be pretty useful. And if we were playing in this one, he didn't necessarily add stats, but you could add stats to, and if, fifth ed, your strength or intel or whatever you else you might have, depending on whatever system you're using, kind of however you want that to work. And then the last screenshot kind of shows you how this happens while you're sort of writing. So this is where he selected a bit of text, and he said, okay, these are other things that exist. And he can kind of, every time there's a mention that comes up, right now you have to hand jam it in, or you don't hand jam it, but you just kind of click and it'll let you sort of make that automatic link, and then it makes an automatic backlink to that text. Eventually, this is where the natural language processing will kick in and actually be able to kind of find some of those things and just automatically tag them for you. We're also trying to work such that, like, if you're close to the name, because I don't know about you, but my spelling is not always great. Even just in my own notes, much less like across different characters or different players, right? You've all spelled Sky's name differently. Half of you have an E on there and half of you have an A in there, who knows why. And it'll pick up things that are pretty close too. So we're trying to be able to kind of capture, like, sometimes spelling is close enough. It's got to be what we're aiming for. So I guess that's one thing too. So this is kind of from a GM's perspective, but the nice thing is that when you create a universe, you can let your players in as well. And so your players can be taking their own notes. GMs can see all the player stuff, but then GMs can choose sometimes what players can see. So as we're going to, kind of be moving through, maybe you wouldn't want people who haven't met Tegan or whoever this character is to kind of know about that person's background. So you would just make that invisible to them until they've learned it, and then you could make it visible. So that kind of ability to sort of let people see and sort of be to kind of have some discretion in who sees what is one of the big features that we want to kind of be able to include as well.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that would be a feature of having a player view. I think that's going to honestly make this even more popular and exciting.
And that's part of why we really want to make sure that we kind of bake in the ability to do this on tablets and mobile phones and things like that too. Because it's a hard thing to do. But I mean, half the time I forget a character sheet or I forget some of my notes, but I very rarely forget my phone when I go to the table. So, even if I don't have everything that I have, I can still pick up my phone and use that to be taking notes. I can still have my character sheet essentially with me at all times. All of the connections that I've seen and made and all the images, just I'll have them right there. Or maybe I just want to be poking around and sort of learning about let's go learn a bit more about Aladar and what my character would know about Aladar. And so what I can see in that, just kind of be able to have it in your pocket all the time.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really useful. I mean, a lot of this has been really exciting, but I think one of the things I'm most excited about now is the fact of like, oh yeah, as the DM, you can just go in and choose what they see. And then as they learn it, make that more visible. Like that's just, I don't know, that's just really cool.
It's one of the things we thought would be kind of fun. And you could, choose even by category. So you might have like everyone who's from this country might know this thing because that's just what they know. But if you're not from that country, you wouldn't know that thing. So, you can turn it on and off by individual, by players, by like the characters themselves and what they might know. We think it has some cool options too, because you could have kind of a co-GM. So if you ever had, games where you have multiple people taking turns GMing, that would be fine. You could sort of trade in and off sort of who's able to know and see what. You can kind of all still access the same set of basic notes there. If you've got multiple campaigns running in the same world at the same time, which not like anybody ever does that, but like it's all part of one universe. So, you might have, I can take a set of, a journal, have a journal that's like for this game and a journal that's for that game. And it's, if something changes and something, in a timeline happens to an NPC, it will kind of be true for all of your different characters and all your different worlds and everything like that. It's just all one system. It's not like having to have 6 different notebooks and trying to cross-reference between them all.
I think that'll be a really useful feature for sure. One thing that I like to ask in all of my interviews, which I realize we're in the development part, y'all been doing this since September, but just with everything so far, what would you say has been the most challenging part?
Honestly, I think getting a single common vocabulary. I think we had a similar vision, and so that was easy, but we all had different kind of backgrounds. So I would be talking about ontologies because I do some stuff with linguistics, and so kind of, I would be talking about that, and someone else would use something else a different word, but they meant the same thing. And so just kind of squaring away the language piece so that we were all made sure that like we were doing the same thing because we were talking about the same things was really quite hard. Actually, it took a whole lot of time, and us, I've got sticky notes still all over my wall where we were trying to be like, this is all the same idea, so let's just come up with a word that we all know means this, and kind of disambiguating that was tough.
That is not an answer that I've heard before, so I kind of want to just dig in a little bit. Or like, I mean, you made sticky notes, and I guess had to have a lot of conversations. But was there anything in particular that really helped build an understanding of what everyone else meant, and then kind of merging it into like what you and your fiance were wanting?
Yep. So I think it was kind of creating visuals. So I'm a super visual person, and so it was kind of useful for me. So getting a bunch of whiteboards and, kind of virtual whiteboards at a certain point when we couldn't be together in person, and just sort of saying, okay, when I, kind of creating essentially those screenshots, right? So getting that first, look of what this might be. And like, when I do this is what I mean when this is. And someone's like, oh, well, that's what I meant when I said this. And so being able to just really kind of visualize it out and then walk through and then do that a couple times to make sure that each time, like, okay, we still had a slight disagreement about that one, and kind of figuring that out. That was, just that being able to kind of visualize it and sort of put it into the context of what we want this thing to look like. That was what was really helpful for us. I also do, at work, I don't know how I know in this, but I also do facilitation. So like all sorts of like human-centered design and like design thinking kind of stuff. And so I found like I end up just borrowing a lot of those tools and being like, all right, we're going to bring these over here. Because a lot of them are about developing systems for humans that are kind of easy to understand. So that was useful.
Yeah, actually, that does make so much sense. So to kind of flip it around, I like to follow up with what has been the most rewarding part so far.
So I think it was actually the demo that I signed us up for. It was, I ran a world building workshop as part of a con. And then at the end of it, basically I had the team, what they were doing live in the background is they were all sitting in and participating, but they also were capturing all of the sort of things that we were saying and the world building that we were doing in the convention workshop space. And they were kind of putting it into this kind of initial mock-up so that at the end we could take sort of 15 minutes and say, hey, look, this is what we're building out. And this is exactly the kinds of things it would catch. And we could sort of show people, that we caught all these different elements of their world, and they could sort of see it actually happening. And said, we didn't pre-plan any of this. This is the world you developed here on the spot, and this is kind of how this can work. And just it was a small group, but the group there was just like so excited by the end of it. And, they were just, we can't wait to see your Kickstarter. Like, I want to do this. And it was such this really honest kind of enthusiasm for this idea that we had. And like, that was just this moment. We were, and of course, the whole team was on and we were all hearing this. And it was this like really affirming moment that like, we're doing something that people would really find valuable and, people were excited about already. And that's kind of enough to keep us going when it gets hard.
That's so special and exciting. Like, how much of the team was there?
We were all there. It was like a Zoom thing, and we were all on. So
okay, yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, I mean, I know. Are you guys getting close to alpha testing?
Yep. So we should be. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks actually is when we'll reach out to our first alpha testers.
Okay.
I'm probably the first real alpha tester, so I get to try and break it first, and then we reach out to everyone else.
Yeah, that tends to be the nature. So then after that, do you have kind of an expected timeline on when you'll be ready for beta testing and then the Kickstarter?
I'm saying 3 to 6 months to get to the beta testing. And so hopefully doing the Kickstarter, probably early in the new year, let's be honest, because trying to do that right around the holidays is going to be a bit of a nightmare. Also, I'm supposed to get married this year, so there's going to be a bit of a gap where nothing's getting done. But yeah, I think that's kind of our plan. I hope we can move faster than that. That would be awesome. But that would be my sort of expectation is sort of in the next, sort of by late summer, early falls, when we're really kind of getting the heavy beta testers in and getting that feedback.
Cool. Yeah. And congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for it. And yeah, I'm really excited for this to come out. I'm excited to get to learn more and kind of see some screenshots and hear a little bit more about how it's going to work.
Yeah, well, definitely. We'll keep you updated too as we kind of go along and screenshots get prettier and prettier. So
awesome. Yeah. Is there kind of anything else that you wanted to say about the project or working with the team that I didn't ask?
I think that's pretty good. I think we covered a whole lot of the sort of really cool stuff. And it's, like I said, it really is something that we do because we're passionate about it. And I think that can make all the difference. So it's, whether or not anyone else ever wants it, we're still going to make it for us anyway. So that's, it's kind of where we are. We just hope someone else, and it sounds like other folks would be interested too. So here's hoping.
Yeah. The best projects are the ones that you really just want for yourself. And then you find, yes, y'all are going to have a lot of people that are excited and willing to sign up for this. I just know it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the optimism and the support and having us on today. Like, I really appreciate that too. It's really nice to kind of be able to talk with this, especially about people who kind of, like, oh yeah, I get the technical details way better than you do.
I know. I was like, all right, I'm not going to ask too many technical questions. I could definitely nerd out about it if I wanted to, but
we'll do a follow up. I'll drag the actual engineers on. Like, you have to go talk. You won't see it. That's not your face. It's just your voice. It'll be fine.
But thank you so much, Kathleen, for coming on today. This was really fun and interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Courtney. It was good. It was nice. Great talking and great chatting.
That's it for today's episode of Roll, Play, Grow. To check out the show notes, you can go to lightheartadventures.com/RPG. To keep up with every episode, please subscribe on your podcast player of choice. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave me a review. Reviews are one of the best ways to help a newer podcast get up off the ground. To follow me on Twitter, you can either find me at lightheartadv for our business account, or at Ketra WCR to see me tweet about other things like my dog and World of Warcraft. You can also find us as Lightheart Adventures on both Instagram and Patreon. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week on Roll, Play, Grow.